My wife just called me her friend, in front of her entire family. That sentence echoed in my head like a car crash on repeat. Janet stood at the center of the dinner table, surrounded by her parents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. Her father had just toasted to the happy couple, and someone joked about our wedding plans. That's when Janet laughed and said, "Oh Jimmy, he's just my best friend, like family, you know?" I froze mid-sip. Her mother chuckled awkwardly. Michael raised his glass from across the table, eyes lingering too long on her. Clara, seated to my left, stiffened. I wasn't a man who made scenes, but at that moment, I wanted to flip the entire table. My fingers tightened around the glass. I kept smiling. Because when you've been loyal for 7 years and suddenly get demoted in public, rage isn't power. Silence is. That was the moment I decided I would never be her friend again. We drove home quietly. She didn't notice I hadn't said a word in 45 minutes. Her makeup was perfect, her hair curled just right. Everything about her was staged, except the lie she told with ease, that I was just her friend. Inside the apartment, she slipped off her heels and poured wine. "Don't be weird about tonight," she said. "You know I meant it in a sweet way." "Sweet?" "Right," I replied, "like how you let Michael pick you up from the airport last week instead of me?" She looked up, wine halfway to her lips. "Are we really doing this?" "No," I said, "we're done doing this." Her glass froze mid-air. "I won't be your stand-in anymore, Janet, not while you flirt with Michael like I'm invisible." "You're being dramatic." "No," I replied, voice steady, "I'm just finally watching things clearly." She didn't speak, she didn't apologize, she just walked to the bedroom and closed the door. I didn't sleep. Instead, I messaged Clara. "Are you awake?" She replied instantly. "Yeah." "Why?" "Oh, okay, can we talk?" 15 minutes later, I was at her door. Clara lived 2 floors above. She wore a hoodie and pajama shorts, eyes red, like she'd been crying. "I didn't know she was going to say that," she whispered. "You didn't deserve that." "I know," I replied, "but it told me everything I needed." She bit her lip. "Jimmy, what are you going to do?" I looked straight at her. "Tell me something. If someone publicly insulted you and replaced you while still living under the same roof, would you stay?" "No." "Exactly." I stepped closer. "You once told me if I ever got tired of being invisible, I'd know where to find you." She swallowed. "I remember. I see you now." And then I kissed her. She didn't pull away, not once. The next morning, I packed all my things while Janet was still asleep. I left the keys on the kitchen counter along with the untouched ring box she never asked about. By noon, I posted one line on social media. Being called a friend taught me who to marry. People messaged, some were confused, some figured it out instantly. By sunset, Clara and I walked into her uncle's wedding banquet. The same family, same crowd, but this time, I wasn't standing beside Janet. I was holding her cousin's hand. And I wasn't invited. I had RSVP'd through Clara, and when Janet turned around mid-conversation, the wine glass in her hand tilted. I raised my voice just enough for the microphone to catch me. "Hi everyone, sorry to intrude, but I couldn't wait anymore." The room paused. Clara looked at me, startled but smiling. "I've been called many things," I continued. "A friend, a shadow, a placeholder, but tonight, I'm something else entirely." Janet's mouth parted. Michael whispered something behind her. I pulled out the ring box from my coat, the one she left unopened. I turned to Clara. "In front of the same people who watched me fade, I want to begin again. Clara, will you marry me?" She gasped, her hands trembled. Janet stepped forward. "Jimmy, what the hell are you doing?" "Finishing what you started," I said calmly. Clara looked into my eyes. "Yes." The applause drowned out Janet's silence. "My name is Jimmy Kent. I'm 32, born in Milwaukee, son of a mechanic and a nurse, not rich, not poor, just be careful. Everything I built from the ground up, one consulting pitch at a time, one sleepless night at a time, one ignored feeling at a time, including my relationship with Janet. We met during grad school. She was sharp-tongued, ambitious, and wore sarcasm like armor. I was the quiet guy in the back row who carried extra pens and always noticed things, like how she chewed the tip of her thumb when nervous, or how her confidence cracked when she thought no one was watching. We weren't supposed to end up together. She was dating someone else. I was invisible. But when her father got sick and the guy she was with vanished, I stepped up, drove her to the hospital, sat outside the ICU, paid bills when her family couldn't. She never said thank you, but she stopped ignoring me after that. Eventually, she leaned on me more, for rides, for emotional damage control, for patience. Somewhere along the way, it morphed into a relationship. I never got a formal yes, it just became us. For 7 years, I was Janet's person. When she wanted to start her boutique firm, I emptied my savings into it. When her mother got diagnosed, I flew across the country to get second opinions. When she got anxious about parties, I stood beside her, never letting go of her hand. But somewhere between her success and my quiet loyalty, I became background noise. Not a partner, not a threat, just the dependable wallpaper in her highlight reel. And it wasn't just the little things, the ignored birthdays, the way she never said I love you unless prompted. It was the slow erasure, the subtle replacements, the distance that grew, unnoticed until it was a canyon. Michael showed up around year 5. He worked in her office building, tall, cocky, wore too much cologne. The kind of guy who told stories louder than necessary and flirted with everyone under the guise of being friendly. I saw him watching her. She said he was harmless. Then one night I came home early from a business trip. Janet wasn't expecting me. Michael was there. He was just helping with a pitch. They were seated too close. Her lipstick was smudged. I didn't ask questions, not because I didn't care, but because I was afraid of the answer. Instead, I waited for her to speak, to confess, to explain, but she never did. She just laughed it off and kissed me like nothing happened. I should have left that night, but when you invest years into someone, you start convincing yourself loyalty is love. Until she called me her friend in front of everyone who mattered. That one word was the clearest confession she ever gave me, and so I left. That's where Clara enters. Janet's cousin. The kind of woman most people didn't notice right away, but should have. She wore quiet strength like perfume, never loud, always lingering. She had this way of listening that made you feel like your words weren't just noise. A sketchbook always lived in her tote bag, and her hands were usually stained with charcoal or ink. Clara and I were never close, not because we didn't get along, but because she never tried to compete with Janet's spotlight. At family events, while Janet worked the crowd, Clara stayed behind with the kids, or in corners, sipping tea and drawing on napkins. But she watched everything. She saw what Janet never did. At my lowest, after Janet's friend remark, Clara didn't try to console me. She didn't spew cliches. She just sat beside me on the building's rooftop, legs crossed, sketchbook on her lap, and said, "You deserve someone who knows your worth without being reminded." That sentence hit harder than any slap. We talked for hours that night, about art, about ambition, about what it means to love someone who's already made up their mind about your role in their life. Clara had once been engaged too, to a sculptor who left her when his career took off. She knew what it felt like to be the placeholder, to be loved in convenience, but left in clarity. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" I asked her, days later, when I started to feel drawn to her. She shrugged. "Because I knew if you were still orbiting Janet, you weren't ready to land anywhere else." It wasn't a love story born from rebound, it was born from stillness, from quiet understanding, from years of being unseen, finally seeing each other. The night I proposed to her in front of Janet's family wasn't impulsive, it was honest. I knew I didn't want to go back. I knew I didn't want to stand on the sidelines anymore, and Clara didn't need to compete. She didn't wear me like an accessory. She stood beside me, not behind me. Janet's reaction, of course, was everything I expected: shock, denial, anger, but for once, none of it mattered, because I wasn't waiting for her approval, or reaction, or permission. I had made peace with the fact that Janet never loved me, at least not the way I needed to be loved. She loved my loyalty, my silence, my predictability. Clara loved the storm beneath it all. My relationship with Janet was 7 years of still water. My connection with Clara was the sound of rain finally breaking a drought. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about making Janet jealous. It was about choosing someone who didn't need to be convinced to choose me back. And that night, as Clara and I walked hand in hand through a crowd of startled relatives, I felt something I hadn't in years: weightless. The kind of peace that doesn't come from being right, but from no longer trying to be wrong for someone else. The news of my public proposal to Clara spread like wildfire, first through hushed family chats, then group messages, and finally, onto social media. Janet's name wasn't mentioned anywhere, but everyone knew. The silence around her was louder than any caption. For days, my phone was flooded with questions. Some congratulated me, some warned me, a few even asked if Clara was just a rebound. I didn't respond to most. But one message stood out. Janet. We need to talk. I stared at the screen for a long time. Clara was seated across from me in the cafe we'd started visiting in the mornings. She noticed the shift in my face. She didn't ask. She just sipped her coffee quietly, sketching a flower she'd seen outside. She messaged, I said. Clara nodded once. It was only a matter of time. I waited for jealousy, insecurity, doubt. But she just looked up and said, meet her if you need to, just don't let her rewrite the past. I had never admired anyone more in that moment. That evening, I met Janet at the old riverside bench where we used to sit during our early days. She was already there, wearing that same navy coat I had gifted her 2 winters ago. Her arms were crossed, her expression is unreadable. You're marrying Clara, she said, skipping any greeting. I nodded. Yes, she laughed, not the light, teasing kind, more like the bitter breath of someone who'd swallowed too much pride too quickly. I don't understand, she muttered. You and I. We've been together for years, and now suddenly, you're done? Just like that? No, Janet, I replied, keeping my voice level. It wasn't sudden. You just never noticed how long I'd already been gone. Her eyes narrowed. So you're saying this is my fault? I'm saying it was mutual neglect, but when you called me your friend in front of your entire family, and Michael, I realized exactly where I stood, and it wasn't beside you. She looked away, biting her bottom lip. That was a slip. You know I didn't mean it like that. No, I replied. It was the most honest thing you've said in months. There was a pause, then she asked, do you love Clara? I answered without hesitation. Yes. That was when the shift happened. Her chin trembled for half a second before she stiffened. Well, congratulations then, she said. Guess my cousin wins. You make it sound like a competition. Isn't it? She snapped. You proposed to her at my uncle's wedding. You knew I'd be there. You could have done it anywhere. You wanted me to see. I didn't do it to hurt you, Janet. I did it to finally choose myself. Her silence felt like the winter wind. She stood and walked toward the railing, facing the river, her back to me. You know what hurts the most? She whispered. That you never once tried to fight for us. You just walked away. I fought for 7 years, I said. Then I realized I was in the ring alone. She turned around slowly. Her eyes were glossy, but not crying, not yet. You really think Clara will love you better than I did? She already does. That was the first time I saw Janet break. She didn't yell, she didn't lash out, she just sat down on the bench and lowered her head into her hands. And then, softly, almost inaudibly, she said, I didn't think you'd actually leave. I didn't reply. Because if I said what I really wanted to say, that she never made me feel like I could stay, it would have destroyed her. Instead, I left. But the emotional knots didn't stop unraveling there. 3 days later, Clara got a call from her mother. Janet had shown up at their house, no shouting, no accusations, just a simple request. Tell Clara to think twice before saying yes. When Clara told me, I expected her to be angry, but she wasn't. She's unraveling, she said. It's what happens when people realize they took a steady hand for granted. I nodded, but something about it twisted in me. Maybe because I had once been that person, sitting alone on a bench, asking why things changed. And then came Michael. He cornered me in the parking lot of my office 2 days later. Bold move, he said, arms folded. Proposing to Clara like that. I'm not here to impress you, I replied, walking past him. He blocked my way. You're making a mistake. Funny, that's what I used to think every time I saw you near Janet. His eyes flared. Nothing ever happened. Then why are you here warning me like a jealous teenager? There was silence. Janet still talks about you, he said finally, more than she should. I exhaled sharply. That's not my problem anymore. You really think marrying Clara fixes anything? I'm not fixing, I'm moving forward. He shook his head. Janet's not done with you. She was never really with me. I walked away without waiting for a reply. That night, Clara and I had dinner on her apartment balcony. The city lights flickered below. She handed me a small sketchbook wrapped in fabric. "I started drawing us," she said, "ever since the night you kissed me." Inside were charcoal sketches. Some are soft, some are messy, all of them are us, me at her doorway. She watches me sleep on the couch. Our hands reached for coffee at the same time. "I don't want to be the rebound, Jimmy," she whispered, "and I don't want to be the way you get revenge." I reached across the table and took her hand. "You're not the afterthought," I said. "You're the first real choice I've ever made." And I meant it. But not everyone believed it. The next morning, my company's board received an anonymous tip alleging I had misused funds during Janet's boutique launch years ago. It was a lie, but the timing wasn't random. I knew where it came from. Not directly from Janet, no, she was too proud for that. But someone close to her wanted to break me down. Clara's cousin or not, the storm was just beginning. Some betrayals leave scars so quiet you don't even feel the bleeding until someone touches the wound. That's how it felt, walking into the office that morning and seeing the email flagged as urgent, financial irregularity inquiry. My name was in the subject line. My past with Janet was written all over it. I opened the document. The allegations were crafted with surgical precision, selective screenshots, dates when I transferred funds into Janet's startup account, and even private email headers from years ago. Oh. Someone had spent time on this. At first, I felt nothing. Just cold, like my blood had stopped moving. Then it hit me all at once: rage, disbelief, the slow creeping shame of being stripped bare in front of people who only saw you as a number on a board chart. I called the compliance head into my office. "Where did this come from?" He hesitated. "It was submitted anonymously, but the tone, it's personal." Of course it was. I looked out the window. The city moved like nothing had happened, but inside me, something was collapsing. I had spent the last 7 years building trust, not just with clients or investors, but with myself. Trying to become a man who deserved love, who was worthy of partnership, not just dependable, but solid. And now, someone was trying to turn my stability into a weapon. I sat down and stared at the ring on my desk, Clara's engagement ring. I hadn't even found the right moment to officially put it on her finger, not after the storm Janet had stirred. Was I pulling Clara into chaos? Was I ruining her peace to fix my own heartbreak? That night, I didn't go to her place. I wandered instead, past the riverside where Janet and I used to walk, past the bookstore where Clara first reached for the same poetry collection I did. Every place carried memory, but memories didn't make a home, choices did. I ended up in my old apartment, the one I'd left after moving out of Janet's. Everything was dusty, cold, untouched, like the version of me that once lived here had died silently and no one noticed. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, and asked myself questions I didn't want to answer. Did I still love Janet somewhere deep down, or was I just angry she discarded me like luggage she'd outgrown? Was Clara truly someone I wanted to spend a life with, or did she represent the door Janet never let me walk through? Would she still want to marry me after everything came out? After Michael, after the betrayal, after this? I pulled out my phone and hovered over Clara's name, then put it back down. She deserved better than the storm in my head. The next day, I received a call from Clara's mother. She was calm, but her voice carried a weight. "Jimmy," she said, "I think Janet's trying to corner you. You need to protect Clara." I asked, "Has Janet said anything to her?" "She hasn't needed to. Clara's heart is soft, but she's not stupid. She sees the moves, and it's hurting her." I hung up and drove straight to Clara's. She was seated by the window, painting. Not drawing this time, painting with real brushstrokes, fast and erratic. The canvas was a storm of colors: gray, black, angry red. She didn't look up when I entered. "I know," she said before I could speak. "About the email, the rumors, everything." I sat beside her. "I didn't use those funds for myself. I only helped Janet during a crisis." "I believe you," Clara whispered. "That's not the issue." "Then what is?" She placed the brush down and looked at me. "I need to know, Jimmy, when you kissed me, was it about me or about her?" That question hit harder than any accusation. I opened my mouth. I closed it, took a breath. "I kissed you because for the first time in years, I saw someone who saw me back, who didn't look through me, who didn't place conditions on my presence. I kissed you because I wanted to, not because I was hurt." She nodded slowly. "But you're still hurting." Yes, I said, but not from losing Janet. From losing myself in her for so long. Clara got up and walked to the kitchen. She poured us tea, hand steady despite her voice trembling. If we do this, Jimmy, she said, handing me a cup, I don't want to be the rebound that turned into regret. I want to be your choice. You are, I said without hesitation. You always were, even before I admitted it to myself. She gave a sad smile. Then fight for us, not with public proposals or loud gestures, but by cleaning the mess that woman left in your life. I nodded. So I did. The next day, I called a press conference, not to explain my relationship history, but to clarify my finances. I walked through every transfer, every receipt, every email, showing exactly how transparent my records had been. I could see the surprise on the board's faces. I wasn't a man fighting for image, I was fighting for peace. Afterward, I went to Janet's office. She was expecting me. You look tired, she said, pretending to be concerned. I'm tired of being a character in your damage control, I replied. She leaned back. You came to threaten me? No, just to tell you it didn't work. She didn't blink. You're going to marry Clara? Yes. You're okay marrying your ex's cousin? I'm not marrying a cousin. I'm marrying the woman who didn't throw me away. Her smile wavered. Even after everything? Especially after everything. And then I walked out. That night, I went back to Clara. I got down on one knee and opened the box. No crowd, no noise, just me and you. Will you marry me, Clara? She didn't cry, she didn't gasp, she just nodded and whispered, yes. And for the first time in a long time, my world felt still. The announcement of our engagement went live on a quiet Tuesday morning. No press releases, no speeches, just one black and white photo, Clara's hand in mine, the ring glinting faintly under warm city light. It was understated, honest, perfectly us. By noon, it was trending. Friends, clients, and even distant relatives shared the post with captions like "Finally" and "Real love wins." The comments poured in. But beneath the surface of congratulations, something darker rippled quietly. A few anonymous comments began surfacing on gossip forums. That's his ex's cousin, right? Didn't he cheat on Janet with Clara? Classic rebound dressed as romance. Most of them didn't bother us. Clara wasn't fragile, but I knew the storm hadn't passed. It was just waiting for the next guest, and it came faster than I expected. 2 days after the announcement, I received a call from Clara's father. A hard man, a former Marine, he didn't like many people, and he didn't trust them easily. Jimmy, he said sharply, can you and Clara come over tonight? Of course, I replied. Is everything all right? I think it's time we talk, all of us. That evening, Clara and I sat on their family couch, surrounded by her parents. Her mother looked nervous, her father looked like he was preparing for battle. I got a letter, he said, tossing an envelope on the table. No return address, no signature, just printed screenshots and a typed paragraph. I reached for it. Inside were photos, blurry, cropped, clearly taken from a distance. One showed Clara and me entering my apartment building, another, us at dinner, and one that made my blood run cold, a picture of me embracing Janet outside her office the day I confronted her. Taken from an angle that made it look like I was comforting her. Below it, typed neatly. You might want to ask your daughter if she really knows who she's marrying. Sometimes, rebounds come with lingering attachments. Clara said nothing. Her hands stayed folded in her lap. Her father stared at me like I was made of glass he was ready to shatter. I confronted Janet. I said calmly, that photo was taken during that conversation. I walked away after telling her I was marrying Clara. And the others? He asked. Private moments, taken out of context. By whom? Clara asked quietly. I looked at her. I don't know, I admitted. But I can guess. Janet had never played fair, but this crossed a line I hadn't thought she'd dare touch. I believe you, Clara said suddenly, voice steady. But this wasn't for me, was it? I nodded. This was for your family, to poison the well, to make sure they'd always wonder. Her father sighed, rubbing his temples. I never liked that girl, but this is low, vicious. Clara turned to her dad. Do you think I don't know who Jimmy is? Do you think I don't feel it every time he's near me? That steadiness, that clarity? Her voice cracked slightly. He's not perfect, but he never pretends to be, and if you can't trust that I chose him with my eyes open, then you're not trusting me either. Her mother reached for her hand. We trust you, she said gently, but we worry, that's all. I'm not Janet, Clara whispered, and I'm not going to let her cast shadows over something that's finally ours. We left not with approval, but with a silence that felt like permission. That night, Clara sat on the edge of my bed, sketching without speaking. Her lines were jagged, harsh, and uncentered. I sat beside her. I'm sorry, I said. She shook her head. Don't apologize for her actions. I just hate that she's still living in our space. She's not, Clara said. She's circling it, but she's not inside. I leaned in. She's trying to make you doubt me. Clara finally looked up. I don't doubt you, Jimmy, but I do wonder, why does she still want to win? She doesn't want me, I said. She just can't stand losing to you. That was the twist. It wasn't about love, it never had been. Janet's pride had been wounded, publicly, and she wasn't trying to take me back. She was trying to destroy what I built with someone else, with someone who didn't have to beg to be chosen. 3 days later, Clara received her own letter, same format, same tone. This one said, if Jimmy really loved you, why did he hold on to the ring he bought for me? Ask him when he planned to return it. Inside the envelope was a photo, my desk, Clara's ring box open, the angle clearly showing the serial number. It was the same box I had planned to propose to Janet with. The ring was never returned. Clara didn't confront me immediately. She placed the envelope on my desk and walked into the bedroom. I followed. My chest felt like it was caving in. I didn't keep it because of Janet, I said. I kept it because I couldn't return it. It was custom made, and when I met you, I couldn't bring myself to replace it because I wanted the first promise I made to mean something for the right person. She sat on the bed, her eyes wet but not broken. You never told me. Because I didn't think I had to. Because when I gave it to you, it stopped being hers the second it touched your hand. She looked at me, long and quiet. Clara, I said, kneeling, I didn't recycle a ring, I reclaimed a future. You're not second, you're the first person I chose freely. After a long pause, she whispered, then show me that it's mine, not in words, in meaning. The next day, we went to the jeweler. I asked them to melt the band, reset the diamond into a new setting, and engrave the inside. To Clara, the first real yes. When I gave it to her again, she didn't cry. She simply slid it on and said, now it's ours. But the storm wasn't over. That night, I received a text from Micah. You should know, Janet's not done, she's got one more move, and it's personal. I stared at the screen. Clara came up beside me. She won't stop until she thinks she's ruined me, I murmured. No, Clara said, she won't stop until she realizes she can't. And in that moment, I knew the final twist was coming, and this time, it wouldn't just test my past, it would test our future. It arrived on a Thursday morning, no courier, no warning, just an envelope left in front of Clara's studio door. Cream-colored, no name, only a wax seal pressed into the flap. When she handed it to me, her hands were cold. It's her, she whispered. We didn't open it immediately. We sat on the couch in silence, the envelope between us like a landmine. I turned it over slowly, then broke the seal. Inside wasn't just one letter. There were 3. The first was addressed to me. Jimmy, you think you understand everything. You think walking away makes you powerful, but let me tell you something you refused to see for years. You were never mine. You were a placeholder for the version of myself I thought I needed to protect. You stayed, you sacrificed, but I never asked you to. You assumed loyalty meant ownership. I know you hate me now. I know you want to believe Clara is your savior. But the truth is, you only love her because she didn't know who you were before me. She sees a curated version. I saw everything, and still stayed longer than I should have. You wanted someone to rescue you from me. Clara just happened to be convenient. But she'll never know you the way I did, and no matter how hard you try to rewrite the past, I'm still the page you started from, Janet. I didn't move for several seconds. Clara watched me, her body rigid, her breathing shallow. She's trying to dig under your skin, she said carefully. Don't let her. She's trying to make you question if I ever loved her, I replied. Did you? I looked at Clara, finally realizing the real confrontation wasn't between me and Janet, it was between me and the pieces of myself I thought I'd buried. I thought I did, I said. But I think I just loved who I became when she needed me. And now? Clara asked. Now I love the man I am when I don't have to prove anything. Clara didn't smile. She reached for the second letter and opened it. It was addressed to her. Clara, I didn't want to involve you. I never did. You were supposed to be the quiet one, the one who didn't compete, the one who always stayed in the background sketching while the rest of us lived the story. But you stepped out of the frame, didn't you? You think Jimmy loves you because you're calm and patient, because you're not me, but let me tell you what you don't know. The day Jimmy proposed to me, he had the same look in his eyes, like he was trying to convince himself. You weren't the first person he chose, you were just the first one who didn't say no. Do you really think you can build a marriage on being someone else's second draft? Be careful, Clara, he's already rewritten one history. What makes you think he won't do it again? Janet. Clara's hands trembled as she folded the letter back up. She's wrong, I said instantly. You're not a replacement, you're the first real beginning. Clara said nothing. The weight of years hung in the room. 7 years of silence, 7 years of misplaced devotion, 7 years of Janet's fingerprints on my choices, it all pressed against Clara's chest now, as if she had to carry it. She's trying to break what we haven't even fully built, I said. But what if she's right? Clara's voice cracked. What if I was just available? I stood and walked to the window. The city glowed quietly below us. My reflection looked back at me, unfamiliar and tired. I didn't choose you because you were close, I said. I chose you because when I finally looked around, you were the only one who saw me. She stood too. Then let's prove her wrong. How? She handed me the third letter. No name, just a single sentence typed at the top. Turn on channel 8, now. I grabbed the remote and flicked on the TV. It was a local talk show, morning gossip fluff, nothing serious. Until the host said, and in today's exclusive interview, we have Janet Lane, founder of Lane Design Studios and former partner of Jimmy Kent, the now fiancé of Clara Moore, who just so happens to be Janet's cousin. My blood turned to ice. The screen shifted to Janet sitting elegantly in a pale blue dress, her smile effortless. The host leaned forward. So Janet, there's been a lot of buzz about your ex and your cousin's engagement. What are your thoughts? Janet smiled politely. Oh, I wish them well, truly, but I think it's important to be honest. Jimmy and I were engaged, once, and when you spend that long with someone, the lines blur. People don't just stop caring overnight. The host smirked. So, are you saying he still has feelings for you? Janet laughed softly. I think Jimmy doesn't always know what he feels. He's very good at convincing people, including himself. Did he ever cheat on you? No, Janet said. But emotional overlap still overlaps. The host leaned in. And Clara? Janet's expression changed just slightly. Clara was always quiet, supportive, maybe too supportive. Some people don't realize they're stepping into a story that hasn't fully ended yet. The host looked shocked. Are you implying Clara knew you weren't over him? I'm saying I don't believe in coincidences, Janet replied. The segment ended there, but the damage didn't. The internet exploded. Blogs titled Love Triangle Between Cousins, hashtags like #Janet and Jimmy started trending, people speculating whether I had betrayed Janet emotionally before leaving her. I switched off the TV. Clara was pale. She knew exactly what she was doing, she said. She made it sound like I was the thief. I won't let her twist this. It doesn't matter, Jimmy, Clara snapped. People already believe it. That interview wasn't for us, it was for the world. I took her hand. Then let's answer her, publicly. How? By telling the truth. That evening, I wrote a letter. Clara helped me edit it, then we posted it together, with our signatures side by side. To those watching, listening, speculating, there are 3 sides to every story, his, hers, and the truth. Here's ours. I was with Janet for 7 years. Not all of them were happy, many were silent. We weren't soulmates, we were codependent in a story we both outgrew. When we ended, I didn't look back, not because I didn't care, but because I had spent years caring alone. Clara didn't steal me, She didn't sneak behind anyone's back, she simply stood still while I finally stopped spinning. Love isn't a battlefield or a headline, it's a quiet decision to choose someone who doesn't make you doubt yourself. That's why I chose Clara, and why Clara chose me. You don't have to believe it, we're not asking you to. We just needed to say it out loud. Jimmy Clara. Within hours, it went viral. Support came from unexpected places. Classmates, colleagues, even clients messaged us privately, saying they admired the honesty. Clara's artwork page received a flood of followers. Our post was shared by 2 major lifestyle blogs under the headline, How to Handle Drama with Dignity. But more than the internet applause, something shifted between Clara and me. We didn't just survive Janet's final strike. We stood in it, together. Later that night, Clara whispered, "I'm not afraid anymore." Of Janet? No, of being second. I pulled her close. You were never second, I said. You were just the first to matter. And in that moment, I knew the war was over. But our story had just begun. A month had passed since the televised ambush. Janet hadn't spoken publicly again. She didn't need to. Her interview did exactly what she intended, sowed doubt, fueled speculation, and left behind a smoky trail of questions. But Clara and I didn't retreat. We did what Janet never expected. We thrived. Our joint letter silenced the tabloids, not because it cleared everything, but because we didn't fight with fire. We drowned it with calm. That, more than anything, disarmed her. But peace wasn't handed to us, it had to be earned. I spent the next 2 weeks cleaning every inch of my life that still had her name in it, closing old shared bank accounts, severing business ties connected to her boutique, even returning one of her paintings she'd left in my apartment years ago. Quietly, respectfully, completely. Clara moved in. Not overnight, not in haste, but gradually, with the rhythm of someone who knew how to build, not just escape. We designed our space together, picked out furniture, settled on a soft teal color for the reading room. Clara insisted on a small studio by the window. I gave her more than that. I installed skylights. One evening, she came home to find her artwork framed along the hallway walls. "You've put me in your story," she said softly. I smiled. "You wrote half of it." That should have been the end. But fate, or maybe poetic justice, had one final card. It started with a call from Michael. He didn't speak casually, not anymore. "You'll want to see this," he said, forwarding a file to my secure email. Janet crossed a line. I opened it. It was a compiled document of falsified invoices Janet had sent through her company, using my old consultant ID as a ghost sign-off. Dates that aligned with her firm's most recent public funding pitch. She hadn't just tried to ruin my reputation, she'd used my name to inflate hers. "She forged your signature," Michael said, "not just once, repeatedly." I sat back. "And how did you get this?" I asked. She didn't think I'd ever turn on her, but she underestimated how quickly a man runs when he sees the house burning. I thanked him, hung up. Then I called my lawyer. 2 days later, a formal complaint was filed with the funding board, attaching every shred of Michael's evidence. I didn't announce it publicly, I didn't leak it to press. I waited. Within a week, Janet's boutique was flagged for investigation, 2 investors pulled out, her lead designer resigned. By the end of the month, Lane Design Studio, a firm I had once poured my savings into, filed for voluntary closure. It wasn't revenge, it was accountability, delivered cold and in silence. I didn't gloat, I didn't post. But I did receive a letter. A real one this time, no wax seal, no theatrics, just a single line. "You win. Signed, Janet." I folded it once and placed it in the back of a drawer. Beats odds. 'Cause it was never about winning, it was about finishing a story that should have ended years ago. The real victory wasn't in watching her fall, it was in knowing I never had to lift a finger to push her. She unraveled herself. 6 months later, Clara and I stood in front of the registrar. No cameras, no family drama, just us, 2 witnesses, and the quiet click of a pen against paper. "Mrs. Moore." She laughed when they said it out loud. "You sure you're ready for this?" she teased. "Was ready the moment you chose to stay when things got hard," I said. We celebrated with grilled cheese sandwiches and coffee on the balcony. She wore my hoodie, I wore her paint. That night, she pulled out something she'd been saving, a new sketchbook, the leather cover embossed with the words, "Peace isn't given, it's chosen." Inside were drawings, moments of us, some real, some imagined. But all of them were free of shadows. I flipped to the last page. It was a portrait. Me, eyes closed, forehead pressed to hers. Her hand on my chest. Both of us drawn in warm tones, no more charcoal, no heavy outlines. "Looks like peace," I whispered. She smiled. "Looks like a man who earned it." A week later, we sent out our wedding invitations. Simple, folded cream cardstock with embossed gold lettering. No unnecessary flair, just one line under the date and time. This time, it's not a placeholder. People showed up, more than we expected, more than we could seat. Even Michael came. He handed me a gift, no card, no words, just a quiet nod of respect. I opened it later that night. Inside was a photo. One of me and Janet. College days, smiling, young. On the back, he'd written, "So you never forget who you outgrew." I showed Clara, she didn't flinch. "Want to keep it?" she asked. "No," I said, "but I want to remember how far I've come." We burned it in the fireplace. One memory turned to ash. Years later, when people ask me how we survived the noise, I don't talk about letters, or interviews, or public betrayals. I will talk about moments. Like the night Clara and I stayed up till 3 a.m. rearranging the living room because the couch had bad energy, or the time she painted our bedroom wall with poetry lines while I slept, or how she never once used my past as ammunition. That's how we won, not by hurting someone louder, but by loving quieter. By building something so solid, no letter, no headline, no ex with a vendetta, could crack it. So when people say revenge is best served cold, I disagree. Revenge is best served successfully, peaceful, and married, to someone who sees you clearly, even when the whole world is throwing dust.